A tooth repair kit bought on Amazon. Will it work to treat a patient? Can you use it at home to replace a missing tooth, maybe a temporary one? How good is this material? And can I, as a dentist, recommend it? You might think, well, as a dentist, he obviously won't recommend it because it'll take away his work. But hold on. Remember, this channel is here to help you. And you might find yourselves in the mountains or somewhere away from home, and you might need something for an emergency like this. So let's test this material. Many people have been tagging me asking, "Doctor, does it really work?" and to see if I recommend buying it for a possible emergency. Let's go. All right, to test this material, first we're going to remove a tooth from our friend Pasmuncio, which will let us see a real-life situation. Let's say you're missing a right central tooth. So we've removed a right central tooth from our friend, and we're going to place this tooth. Now, the instructions are as follows. This is the kit. These are the famous little beads. And it says here very clearly how to use it. First of all, you put some of these beads in boiling water, and with a small spoon, stir it until the material melts and comes together. Mold the tooth when the material isn't too hot and is translucent. The extra material can help secure the tooth to the ones next to it. In other words, we're going to make a sort of Maryland bridge, which are those bridges that have little wings and stick to the other teeth. Finally, it says, place it where you're missing the tooth and use a medical grade adhesive after it cools and hardens. Or simply place it directly in the mouth and wait for it to harden when it's not so hot. It says it can be sanded and polished with sandpaper if the tooth has fingerprints on it. So, well, let's see. We have boiling water here. We're going to put these pearls in here and see how it goes, huh? Let's go. All right, we're gonna place these famous pellets or beads in here. About, I don't know, I guess a small spoonful. We're gonna go to the mouth and try to do it directly there, because this is already completely cool, but it's still quite moldable. All right, let's see. Okay, I'm placing the tooth in position. Let's imagine this is in a real mouth, so we have to shape it to roughly match the other tooth. Obviously, yes, there will definitely be a lot of fingerprints left. I have no doubt about that. So we'll have to use some kind of tool, a blade or something like that, to be able to shape it more correctly. If I start using my dentist tools, it would be cheating, because then you would think, well, of course, a dentist with those tools can shape a tooth much more easily. So what we're gonna do is try to use tools that we all have at home, so that this is a 100% real and valid test. As you can see, it's hardening. If for some reason it hardens and you can no longer mold it, you can add a little more hot water and it will become moldable once again. When it starts to cool down, it's harder to take it out and put it back in. Okay. One of the options we have is to leave it there to harden and it won't move anymore. But if we do that, we won't be able to polish it. The other option is to take it out and put it back in and polish it outside and then put it back in again. Obviously, I would recommend that if you're going to wear it and eat with it, well, don't do it, right? Because if you eat with this, you could, well, swallow it easily because it's not gonna stick. Unless you use some denture adhesive and put it on the back here, on these little wings, and stick it on like that. But be careful, because that will obviously cause some excessive buildup of adhesive on the papillae, which are these. And, well, the inflammation will be pretty bad, you know? Why am I not using gloves? Because if I put on gloves, well, knowing that you don't have gloves at home, I try to make it as, well, realistic as possible, right? You're gonna manipulate it with your hands, just like I'm doing it right now. The microscope obviously shows a lot of very interesting little details. My nails are very short, but here it looks like they're gigantic. Wow. This is hardened now. Now we're gonna give it some finishing touches. To polish it, well, you can use wet sandpaper, you can use these files that are kind of like, well, for giving a finish to wood. There are many ways, many options, but what I want to do, obviously, is do it in a way that isn't from the dental office, right? So you can also see that at home, you could get a similar result. We're trying to give this one a little bit of anatomy, a little bit of shape. We constantly go back to the mouth to see if we're giving it more or less. Okay? And so we're gonna spend a while polishing and sanding. Let's see how practical or how unlikely it is that this material can help us make a tooth. Here, I'm using a different file. You can get these files at the hardware store. They're very good. And what I'm trying to do is give it a little bit of anatomy, okay? So that the central incisor has a certain anatomy, so it looks like a tooth, right? Because the key is that the teeth don't end up square and long and big, but that they have certain angles. And that's what I'm doing right now with this file. It's not as malleable as acrylic, huh? I mean, I've handled, obviously, materials that are acrylic, and acrylic is much easier to sand and polish. This is like a hard plastic that leaves a kind of burr, and that doesn't allow it to be sanded as nicely as what would happen with the acrylic. So let's continue to see what happens. Well, friends, we're done. Obviously, this is a prototype. You can spend as much time as you want on it. This is what was left with just my hands and the file. I noticed that after sanding it for a while, it started to melt because it was getting hot. Let's look at it from behind. Notice how a sort of mass has to be formed that has those little wings so that it holds. I'll be very honest with you, the material is not practical at all. It's not like an acrylic that can be carved. Believe me, I tried. I even tried to cheat. I went to the lab, and when I started to polish it, well, guess what? It melted. Since it heats up, it melts and becomes a little, well, malleable again. So it's not easy at all. You really have to be artist for this tooth to look super good. But having said that, on the other hand, for a meeting, a party, something urgent, you put it on, well, it's not something that won't work for you, right? And it works for you as an emergency, but it has to be a super emergency, and obviously you have to do it right. Right now, I'm going to try to make a better one with dentist tools. Let's see how it turns out, and I'll show you. Right now, we are doing the same tooth, but now we are using a dentist spatula. I mean, in a slightly more professional way, right? This way we can give the tooth a better shape, and we can, well, try to do something much better than what was left from doing it by hand a moment ago. Be careful, I am not recommending at all that you all do this at home, okay? This is in case of an emergency. But you always have to go to the dentist, because there are many negative things that can happen to you if you do this for something permanent. As I already mentioned, this is not just for an emergency. But, well, if you're going to be away, you're going to be out of the country, and you won't have access to a dentist, it's not a bad option, as long as you plan to visit your dentist afterwards. All teeth have these little figures, these little shapes here. We're going to try to give them the same ones here. What this will help us with is that when the light hits it, here like this effect, the light reflects on this line angle and it looks much more like a tooth. Yes, exactly. If you want to see it that way, it's a small dental anatomy class for patients. This is a bit crazy. Believe me, it's very difficult to model on this because it bounces back. You push it and the shape returns. So I'm trying to do the best I can with what I have. Very well, the material is already hardening there. It's getting harder and harder. This color of the typodont we are seeing from Padmosio is white. It's a white color, but this color is much whiter. So we are going to notice a discrepancy. If you have slightly more yellow teeth, it will definitely be noticeable. How could we change the color? Well, maybe with turmeric, it occurs to me, something homemade. Well, coat it a little in turmeric. Do it first on a small piece. Don't do it on the tooth that took you half an hour to make, because if you stain it too much, well, it's ruined, right? Well, it's done, so let's polish it. As I was saying earlier, if we do it with a lot of heat, it won't work, because this little tooth melts and loses its shape. So we have to use water if we want to polish it, obviously, so that it doesn't change its shape. In fact, look how here on this tip, it's changing shape, even though we're using water to cool it. So it's not very malleable, let's say. Well, look, in a strange way, I can't manage to polish this. It's every time I run the burr over it, it melts. It can't handle the speed of the burr, it melts. So, well, we're gonna have to do it with wet sandpaper and that's it. I can't polish it with my polishers because my polishers generate a certain amount of heat. Let's see if it's possible with this polisher. Let's see if it doesn't melt on me. We're trying to polish this little tooth, but no matter what tools I use, this material is not made to be polished. since the friction, even though I'm using water so there's no temperature, causes the material to melt, which is not good, you know? It doesn't let me polish it like an acrylic would, you know? Don't think it's easy. I tried to cut it a little while ago with a burr and it melted on me, so if you don't get the shape right when you're molding it, you practically have to do it all over again. Look, there it is. Okay. Alright, let's take some pictures of it. Super. Smile. Very good. How about that, huh? Well, friends, there you got it. It's a very interesting material that I could even recommend for people who are going to travel. Those who are going to have some important event and will be far from their dentist. Of course, I wouldn't recommend it as a definitive material. I already told you for what reasons this can hurt your gums if you don't place it correctly. This was not supported by the teeth. So when you bite, every time you make this biting motion, you're biting on your gum. I would definitely not recommend that. Now, you also have to take into account that if you're going to place this attached to the other teeth, a lot of food will accumulate. It's going to get dirty, it's going to be relatively dirty, it's going to cause bad breath. So, I repeat, this is very good for a temporary solution. Something very quick, something for a day or two until you can see your dentist. But of course, it will never replace the help of a dentist who does professional work, and above all, functional and of course, more aesthetic work. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Also, visit the Instagram at Dr. Federico Baena Q so you can keep watching more of these types of videos. That's where they suggested I make a video about this. So you can also send me messages there about, well, materials, videos you want us to discuss. There are many things we can talk about. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet, and we'll see you in the next video. Take very, very good care.